Hello, everyone, and welcome to Ron Watches, the second show on this YouTube channel. It's pretty simple. I am Ron. I have watched something, and now I want to discuss it. I mean, I can't do 80s things all the time on this channel because it takes time to to find and get those 80s things delivered to you. But I can watch movies. I've been on sort of a black and white classic tear here through late 2020 and early 2021. I blame Peacock for putting all of the Universal Monster movies on their streaming service. I pretty much went through all of them during the Halloween season in 2020, and that carried on into the Christmas season, where I watched It's a Wonderful Life for the first time ever. Then a friend of mine for this Christmas season got me this lovely gift. It is the Alfred Hitchcock Masterpiece Collection. And if you look inside, it has pretty much almost every Hitchcock movie there is. Almost, not quite all of them. And while the collection looks great on my shelf, what good is a movie collection if you don't watch the movies? So I started watching the movies, and the first movie I pulled out was actually a Hitchcock movie I had never seen. It is a black comedy instead of a suspense or horror movie. It's from 1955, and it's called The Trouble with Harry. It's one of Hitchcock's 5 lost films. This movie, along with Vertigo, The Man Who Knew Too Much, Rope, and Rear Window, were all purchased by Hitchcock and then never released to studios again until he passed away, and then his estate finally released them in the 80s. So this is one of those movies that he kind of hoarded for himself for a long time until the 80s. Let me tell you what The Trouble with Harry is. Do you know what The Trouble with Harry is? The trouble with Harry is that he's dead. Harry's dead. He doesn't have a line. He's dead from the beginning of the film until the end of the film. It's not a horror film, so he doesn't come back to life. The trouble comes about because all the people in the town where he died are jerks. This is the first movie for Shirley MacLaine, who was just a chorus member on a Broadway show before this, and also for the Beaver, Jerry Mathers. Now, for those of you who are watching, you probably have no idea who the Beaver is. Let's just say he was the main character on a show called Leave It to Beaver, famous for being the first show ever to show a toilet. But back to The Trouble with Harry. The trouble isn't really with Harry. The trouble is with all of the townsfolk who find Harry's body being jerks. First, we meet a hunter who's well past his prime, probably should not be allowed to have a gun and shoot at things. Apparently, he thought he was shooting at a rabbit and shot Harry. Now, Harry's wound, as we will see, is up here on his head. So I don't know what kind of hunter is shooting at a rabbit who's low to the ground and hits somebody in the head, 6 feet up. That dude should not be allowed to have a gun. But then we find out Harry is actually the husband of Shirley MacLaine because his brother was her previous husband and her brother died. So this guy said, well, I gotta marry my sister-in-law because that's normal. And Shirley MacLaine, because Harry is annoying, hits him over the head with a milk bottle. So she thinks that she killed him with a milk bottle. Then while he's wandering around in the woods, all confused because he got hit in the head with a milk bottle, just because he's super annoying, another lady, older lady, and I use the finger quotes because in the film, people guess her age around 50, but she claims she's 42. I'm not buying it. She looks every bit of 50 years old. Anyway, she claims that Harry was also in the woods, very annoying to her, so she hit him in the head with a shoe, and that's what killed him. And that's probably a little bit closer to the wound that he had, as opposed to I was shooting at a rabbit and I missed by 35 feet, but somehow I hit this guy in the head. Here's the crazy thing. This guy's body, Harry, his body is laying like a meadow in the middle of Vermont. And people seem to be okay with this. The doctor of the town, a learned man, keeps walking into the meadow. He's reading a book. Apparently he's reading Shakespeare. He is so into the Shakespeare that he trips over the body not once, but twice, and doesn't look down to see what tripped him, pays no attention, keeps walking. I don't know if that's a doctor that I would want to work on me. So it should be no surprise later in the film when this particular doctor looks at Harry's body and says, oh yeah, he died of natural causes. Even though he got hit in the head with a milk jug and a shoe earlier in the day has an open wound on his head, natural causes. I'm not buying it. And we haven't even gotten to the main character yet. This guy, Sam Marlowe, who's this starving artist type who's trying to sell his paintings at the local general store in a town of about 15 people. Like, dude, everybody knows that you're an artist. Nobody wants to buy your art. Stop making art. Get a freaking job, bro. But somebody does want to buy his art. Some millionaire, we know he's a millionaire because he's driving in like the really fancy car that might be what passed for a limousine back in 1955, stops at this booth and is very interested in his art. Unfortunately, Sam Marlowe doesn't seem to give a crap and he completely ignores the guy and he drives off. Maybe that's where the comedy part of this comes in. So we have some love connections here. Sam Marlowe, who's the starving artist guy, is immediately attracted to Shirley MacLaine, but she's technically married to Harry, who is now dead. Sam, very upfront, especially for 1955, just says, hey, I'm a painter. Can I paint you nude? Listen, I've tried that line on girls for years. Never works. And didn't really work with Shirley MacLaine at first. But by the end of the movie, I think she's kind of down with it. Seriously, by the end of the movie, he proposes to her. She, who was married to a different dude when she woke up that day, is legally not divorced from him just yet. Completely agrees, because that makes sense. I just met this dude today. Let me marry him. Maybe she just wanted to marry him because she needed someone to take care of the beaver. If we know anything from Leave It to Beaver, that dude gets in all kinds of trouble. We have another love connection between the old guy who thought he was shooting a rabbit and thought he shot somebody in the head. He's just called the captain. I don't know why he's captain of. I hope I'm never on a ship where he is captain. And the lady who thinks she's in her 40s but is really in her 50s. But the only reason she's really romancing the captain is because she's convinced that she killed Harry. And the captain has admitted to her that he killed Harry. So she's just being nice to him so that he can take all the blame for her because she's a jerk. And the captain is being nice to her because he doesn't want her to tell on him because he's a jerk. Through the whole day, instead of actually contacting the authorities and saying, hey, we found this body, we don't know what happened, everyone seems okay with hiding the fact that a dude has died in the middle of the woods. They bury him like 3 times. They keep unburying him to look at his wounds or to move him over or to hide him from the cops. These are not the actions of sane people. Now, this movie is based on a book, so I can't really blame Alfred Hitchcock for this insane plot. But what this really reminded me of would be the show Seinfeld. Because let's be honest, all of those characters on Seinfeld, as we found out in the last episode of Seinfeld, they were all jerks. And they would do this kind of thing to make sure that they didn't get in trouble. So Alfred Hitchcock invented Seinfeld 40 years before Seinfeld came on the air. Eventually, because I guess we have to have happy endings for these people who are complete jerks, Shirley MacLaine, who tried to kill her husband earlier in the day, agrees to marry Sam Marlowe, who at the beginning of the day could not pay a $2 tab at the general store. But the millionaire comes back and wants to buy all of his paintings because, it's all in the eye of the beholder. And this guy wants to pay Sam Marlowe millions of dollars. But instead of taking millions of dollars, he decides just to get little things for his friends like a typewriter or a cash register, some strawberries, whatever. Things that he could easily buy for $1 million and have a ton of money left over. So it's a pretty stupid deal on his part, honestly. And if I'm Shirley MacLaine, I'm telling the dude, hey, look, you obviously have no clue what's going on. I'm not going to marry you. And then we get a scene at the end where all of the people involved are trying to dupe the local authority, who is played by Royal Dano. Now, Royal Dano is pretty famous for Western TV shows. But I would also like to mention that Royal Dano is the first ever narrator of the Hall of Presidents at Disney World, which is a fact that you can find in a book that I wrote. called Tier 3, 10 Underappreciated Attractions at Walt Disney World. Now, I didn't mean to start this video as a plug, but if Alfred Hitchcock's going to throw a plug in there for me, I'm going to take it. Right, Al? You can't call Alfred Hitchcock Al, because he's the type of guy that would insist that you call him Alfred. So the movie ends with none of these characters getting any comeuppance for being complete jerks and completely trying to kill this guy, and then when he dies, either ignoring the fact that he died and hitting on his wife, his now widow, or trying to hide the fact that this person died so they don't get in trouble. It's a happy ending for all of them. And I suppose maybe in 1955 we wanted happy endings for people in dark comedies, but like today, if there's a dark comedy, usually all of the people involved have not happy endings. They have tragic endings, because that's what happens to people who are jerks. Even in Seinfeld, they ended up in the jail. Not in this particular movie, because apparently Alfred Hitchcock decided these people needed happy endings because maybe they're just misunderstood instead of being complete jerks. Either way, the movie wasn't a huge box office success, but Alfred Hitchcock loved it himself. Contemporary reviewers of the time gave it a fair to just above fair sort of rating. It didn't bring in a big box office, but it seems like reviewers of the time would give it about a 5 or a 6 out of 10. That's probably where I'm going to land to. It's not that it was not entertaining, because it was entertaining. It's just that it's like any dark comedy, it's hard to find a character to relate to, because you just want kind of all of these people to be punished for being total jerks. But they're not in this particular movie. But it's a good introduction to Alfred Hitchcock in his masterpiece collection for me. I mean, I've already seen like a half a dozen Hitchcock films or so, but I'm happy to have seen this one. If you have it, I would recommend watching it. I wouldn't go out of my way to find it unless it's free on like Amazon Prime or Peacock. Peacock has a lot of Hitchcock stuff. I didn't look to see if they had this one, but they may. So check it out. Probably about a 5 out of 10 from me for The Trouble with Harry. The trouble with Harry is the fact that he's dead and everyone around him doesn't seem to care. Harry, you needed to have a better life. That's all for The Trouble with Harry from 1955. Like, subscribe, share, the bell, notifications, whatever else you need to do. Please like and share all of that other good stuff that you guys already know how to do on YouTube. Why? Because as you can tell probably from this black curtain over here that now has light in it, I'm actually recording this the next day because the ending I had previously recorded wasn't very satisfactory. I had drank a little bit of whiskey before recording last night. So that's the end of this episode, and I will see you when I watch something again.